The history of GA4 is actually quite long. It dates back to the 90s when it used to be called Urchin Analytics, and it was pre-Google's acquisition. So this is quite a common Google thing where they buy a product and they rebrand it over the time. But Google Analytics is one of the first, actually. I've got a clip I'm going to show you and go through of a talk that I did a couple of months ago. But the long and short of it is that Google Analytics has come out now, of course, with Google Analytics 4. This is the first time they've numbered them. In retrospect, I think we've gone back and renamed them in terms of the numbering system, but it's not quite obvious which one's which. Generally speaking, we've retroactively named Universal Analytics GA3, so you might see that term change interchangeably used. However, Google Analytics 4, they've started numbering them. I don't know if there's going to be a 5 or a 6, but let's take a little clip of a talk that I did going through a bit of the history and the process Google went through.
Where does it start? So if we do a bit of a jump back in time and go back to the 90s, I'm sure most of us remember the 90s. But in 1998, a company called Urchin Analytics was formed, and that's great, but we didn't really care. But that was bought by Google. If you recognize any of these logos, that will be great, and I recognize a lot of these. Google Analytics was released as we know it as Google Analytics after the acquisition from Google in 2005. And this was actually a start of a journey from Google to start to monetize their stuff, right? So in the year 2000, 2001, they released Google AdWords, and they actually started monetizing their search engine. They needed a way to measure the success of their advertising, and what better way than a common Googleism nowadays, which is to buy an existing company doing it pretty well and rebrand it as a Google product.
So yeah, that is common. You can see that throughout all of the kind of product history within Google themselves in terms of acquiring, rebranding, and kind of making their own. To give them a bit of credit, the only two things that I can think of in terms of the analytics space, at least, where they built their own was the Google Tag Manager platform. They built that from scratch, and even Google Search and Google Ads, and that was theirs from the original days. But things like Firebase, for example, was independent. Even the DoubleClick network, that they now call DV360, SA360, and Campaign Manager 360, that was all independent. So Google's gone through a lot of acquisitions, including, of course, Google Analytics.
So along comes Universal Analytics, which is the GA3, I suppose we can call it. That was back in 2012, believe it or not. And that is the current iteration of Google Analytics. There's been some quality of life improvements, but it has not really changed since 2012. And if we move on to the next one, logo, and one more, that's it. Google Analytics 4 finally came out of beta, which is a subject of conversation. It is now a stable release. As of the October 2020.
So yeah, October 2020 is when Google Analytics 4 officially came out. So it feels almost like a brand new product, and it still feels pretty new, but actually it's been out for a good couple of years, or at least at the time of recording this video. Another thing to mention as well, which was highlighted in that, is that Universal Analytics, or now GA3 as we call it, came out in 2012. This is a product that has been pretty stagnant for over 10 years. And so this is possibly why a lot of people almost feel a bit of whiplash going into Google Analytics 4 from Universal Analytics, is because we've got a tool that's been kind of incrementally updated and kept up to date since 2012. For over 10 years, and then along comes Google Analytics 4, and what it's done is it's just kind of like reset, and it's now built a product for the 2020s. So a lot of the way that we use the internet, devices, websites, even applications, all of that's completely changed in the last 10 years. Well, pretty much due to everything. So yeah, I mean, Google Analytics 4 is a modern tool for the modern devices and the way that we use them. But yeah, Universal Analytics, everyone's comparing it against Universal Analytics, or at least has been historically. And yeah, it's a very outdated tool now. Anyway, that gives a brief overview of the history of Google Analytics 4. There was no GA3, but I suppose we're calling Universal Analytics GA3 now. If you wanted to get a sense of an idea of where I think the 4 core products are, going back to the 90s with Urchin Analytics all the way up to 2020 with GA4. Yeah, I hope that's of interest. There is a really great article from one of the original creators back in the Urchin days that I'll link off to in the description of this if you wanted to go a bit deeper and learn a bit more around what it was like in the Urchin days and through the Google acquisition. But yeah, otherwise I'll see you in the next one.